Bob, going back to Buddha nature,
Hmm.
one of the efforts that we are really putting in is also to take Buddha nature as a philosophical concept or as a notion, a practical sort of concept that can be used to promote positive thinking, because we live in a
Yes,
world which is filled with negative bias, wicked world syndrome. There's so much sort of negativity around. And
yes.
now, if you go beyond religion, there is a sort of host of plethora of philosophical positions which are actually counteracting um, ideas like Buddha nature. So, what would be a good sort of strategy or pathways to get into this
Well, I
philosophical
think that
dialogue?
I understand that. To me, I think the nowadays the way I understand. First of all, let me say one other thing, and that is that the actual original word, right, is Tathagata Garbha or Sugata Garbha, and the word Garbha in Sanskrit actually means a womb, you know, or it can mean even a fetus in a womb, and um, and then Tibetans translate as Ningbo, which means essence more than nature. And it's really I think the Buddha nature in English usage comes from Chinese, where they think for Xing, they use the word Xing, which means like nature. And, and I'm very fond of Nagarjuna's expression, Shunyata Karana Garbham, Dongye Ningji Ningbojen. It's such a wonderful, in Tibet, both in Tibetan and Sanskrit. In Tibetan, the sound of it is so wonderful. Dongye Ningji Ningbojen. It's amazing. It was like a favorite word of Atisha. Dongye Ningji Ningbojen, he used to say. And it comes from Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, of course. And and so the idea of emptiness, instead of being, because we use a lot for emptiness the analogy or the metaphor, simile of space. So people, when they say emptiness, they think of an empty space. But that, of course, is not correct, because form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Like in the heart sutra, Tongpanit su, Tongpanit su so, su Tongpanit, Tongpanit su so. So therefore, matter is just as empty as space. So emptiness is something more inconceivable than just space. Although it's a good way of starting to think about it as a kind of simile. But and therefore the idea that shunyata is like a womb, which is like a membrane of nurturing energy, right? Like a womb is where we take our bodies when we're conceived and we attach to the wall of it, and then we get the nurture from the mother's bloodstream through that wall. So it's like an enfolding of beings in something positive that is nurturing and protecting them. And I think that we have to admit that all of the Asian Buddhist cultures were quite male chauvinist, patriarchal. So I don't think they were comfortable with this garba. So don't, deshe bengel. They didn't ever want to translate as deshe bengel or deshe ngel, the like actual word for a womb, because a male, monk, ex-warrior, but new monk, mendicant, doesn't want to have a womb, and they don't mind having a nature, or they don't mind having an essence, but they don't want to have a womb. So I'm just saying, there's a funny thing in the actual original concept by Buddha, where Prajna Paramita, right, is the mother of all Buddhas. So that sort of female imagery, of clear light, and the Vajra Yogini kind of ideas are a little bit hidden, I feel, in the concept of Buddha nature. And for me, what Buddha nature is so good about is it enables Buddhists to feel that Buddha's still with them, that Buddha is so close. It's that Buddha is like right in them or with them or as them. It's even more inconceivable than something in you. It is you in a way. And I'm very fond of um, the Vimalakirti Sutra. As I don't know, did I ever give you a copy of my English version of that? I don't know if I ever did.
No, I didn't receive a copy, but I have been
Oh, I will
reading
bring
it.
one
I
next
have
time I come. I
enormous.
promise. I
Thank
promise I
you.
will bring one. I really, I love that sutra. And that sutra makes a very powerful argument about how the Buddha Kshetra, this Buddha, Dakshin, is the planet Earth. This is Sabe. We call it in Tibet, what do we call it? Saba. Saha, Suja, really, to be tolerated, Saha. The Saha universe is this Buddha's, it's where we are now, Shakyamuni is in his thing, and he didn't leave. The idea that his coarse body, he withdrew, of course, in his parinirvana. And then we even wrongly translate parinirvana as final nirvana. But pari doesn't mean final. Yongsu does not mean final. Tama. Yongsu does not mean tama. It just means total. So Buddha is everywhere here as the Dhammakaya. And we are still enfolded in his concern that we get to be Buddhas ourselves as soon as possible. We're very stubbornly not doing it, but he wants us to, and he's there with us. So the idea of what they would call in the Christian Protestant theologians would say, the pantheistic heresy, the idea of the pan-Buddhistic heresy, like everything is Buddha, which is the vision of Lotus Sutra. It is the vision of in a way, it's the vision of Buddha nature. It's really the highest vision of Buddha nature. And in a way, it's what Shentong is getting at, although I don't agree with that way of doing it personally, because I feel it can be kept very logical as long as we're being logical. And to say that the absolute has properties, to me, is illogical, because it defies the meaning of the term absolute. And the whole thing of emptiness is the confirmation of the absoluteness of relativity, if you will, which is, of course, a paradoxical, contradictory statement. But nevertheless, that means when logic takes you to the brink of where, you have to recognize that no verbal expression can possibly express what reality is anyway. So then you just drop out. But up until then, that there should not be illogic up until that brink. I'm very strong about that. Anyway, I agree with Jadam about that one. But on the other hand, I appreciate the Shentong in that the Shentong thing is wanting to say, and I think Dolpa's experience for sure was the complete immanence, the presence of Buddha in everything and as everything. I get that. I do get it, and I admire that. I feel he gets that from his Kala Chakra vision, vision of coming out of the stupa, the great stupa of that he made, the great Kala Chakra stupa that he built, right? And I feel that's wonderful. I do. But when it's presented as a philosophical logic, I cannot. I will always debate that. That's all. But I love it for the feeling. And so the Buddha nature thing, with or without the Shentong thing, either one, is a wonderful thing, I feel, for people to cheer up. In my old age, one thing I have decided, and I think I say, is that people in almost every culture have been terrorized in history by their governments and by their religions, which are connected often to the governments. And they're terrorized in the sense of they're made to feel unworthy, they're sinners, they're ignorant, and hell is waiting if they're a little bit careless, and it's very dangerous, life is dangerous. So they need the protection of their guru, they need the protection of the king, they need the protection of the high priest, so they need to be saved by somebody else. They don't have, they're not, reality is not safe. And I think that leads to a lot of aggressiveness and fear in people. And in a way, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy then, where they then ready to fight all the time. And so then they create conflict, and then they do create a bad situation for themselves. And so I feel that Buddha's I make a big fuss nowadays, which people can say I'm just old and sentimental. That they can say that, but I make a big fuss that even in the Four Noble Truths, in a way, you could say he is teaching the closeness of Buddha to people in his third noble truth, because the only one that is really real is the third one. The first, second, and fourth are relative reality. They're paratantra, and he says so right away. And only the third is his discovery. He didn't discover first one. Everybody knows about the first one. He discovered the third one, and then that enabled him to see the second one, which was the cause of the first one that everybody knew. And what he discovered was solution to the first one. So the freeing people from fear is what he's trying to do, in other words. And so that's why I like Shentong for its effort to free people from fear. The idea that there's goodness in ultimate reality, even when they say it's almost like a relational thing. In a way, never mind, fine, no problem. If it cheers people up, because I just think people should be cheered up. And there's a way that Buddhists can use the First Noble Truth on themselves and on others as a kind of a little bit to frighten people, and get them. And in a way, sometimes you have to, like a bandit or a robber, you have to kind of get them to be worried. If they keep behaving badly, they'll have a bad result. So you have to be a little cautionary to them. So there's a purpose for it, I understand sometimes. But ultimately, I think the human being is ready for being cheered up. It's what Shakyamuni discovered. And I want to honor that, So that's Buddha nature. Therefore, I was so delighted when you honored me by inviting me to speak to you about this topic, because that's my main thing nowadays is Third Noble Truth. Although I don't claim I attained that at all. I'm still wishing for it, and I hope to attain it one of these days. In fact, I feel confident I will, but maybe not in this life, maybe in the future life.